All right, let's do it. So, welcome to this episode of the Uplink. This is the semi-regular webinar that Helium does with our ecosystem partners to talk about what's happening on the network and really just sort of showcase the really cool applications being built on top of the Helium network and the Helium blockchain. So, I am Mark Phillips. I'll be your sort of MC for today. Most of what we're going to talk about lies in the hands and the heads of the Airly folks. Chris and Michal, have them introduce themselves in a moment. Just for some background, I guess the agenda. I'll do a quick Helium intro. The expectation here is that a lot of people are somewhat familiar with Helium, so we're not going to focus too much on Helium in this webinar. We're going to have the Airly crew spend most of the time talking about what they're building on top of the network and specifically about their use case. But I'll do like 5 to 6 minutes of intro on the Helium network so people can sort of have a baseline. If you have additional questions about Helium, we're going to have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to pop them in the chat inside of the Zoom chat here, and we will get to them. Typically, we get to them on the fly, but we'll get everything sort of at the end if we don't. When I'm done, I'm going to kick it over to Michal and Chris on the Airly team, and they're going to lead a discussion, and I'm going to pepper them with very hard-hitting questions about what it is that they're building. We'll probably run about 30 minutes, and yeah, let's just have a good time. Chris and Michal, you ready to go?
Yep, ready.
Cool. Okay. I'll take Chris's silence as a yes.
Let's do it. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, off we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Mark Phillips. I run business development here at Helium. I've been with the company for a while, actually, now that I think about it, I think my 7-year anniversary is February 2nd or something, which is just bonkers. I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts, for anybody who might be on the East Coast of the United States. And most of the Helium team is on the West Coast in the Bay Area. And I'll kick it over to Chris and Michal and let them do quick intros before we dive into this whole thing.
Yeah, my name is Chris Sterry, and I'm in charge of product and growth at Airly. I've been there about 6 months now. I'm on the West Coast of the US. We're dispersed kind of across the globe, but headquartered in Poland, where Michal Misiak is, and I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, I'm Michal Misiak, and I'm one of the co-founders of Airly. It was 6 months ago, but it feels like eternity when Chris came to Airly, and a lot of things had to change. Basically, we have to deal with different time zones, but it's all for the Airly benefit, so I'm not complaining. And I will tell you more about air pollution and what our team is doing to tackle this problem.
Good. All right, and so people can hopefully see over, I guess, my left shoulder, right? What is this? My right shoulder, whatever shoulder this is. There we are. You can tell,
right.
I don't do news. We're going to talk about this thing here, which is the sensor, the Airly sensor, which is glorious and looks much bigger in this picture than it actually is in real life, which we can talk about. So this is what we're mostly going to be talking about, the Airly sensor, what sort of data it captures, and quite frankly, why people on this call should buy one and deploy it to the Helium network, because you certainly should. And we'll have details on it at the end. But briefly, before we get into that, about Helium. So founded in 2013, like I mentioned, I joined just after we were founded. We've raised about 53 million to date in venture funding across seed, A, B, and C rounds. From companies like Cosa Ventures, GV, which is Google Ventures, First Mark Capital, SV Angel, Mark Benioff, Munich Re, which is the largest global reinsurance carrier. And then most recently, I guess 2 years ago now, in 2019, Multicoin Capital and Union Square Ventures, which really fueled the sort of growth that we've had here, specifically on the blockchain side. And so the biggest takeaway about the Helium network for people who might be new to it is that it's an incentive-built network. It's an incentive-built LoRaWAN network. So anyone can be rewarded for creating wireless coverage. And so we're going to talk about how the Airly team is part of the network out in Poland, and how people who are deploying the Airly sensors will become part of the Helium network. But the reason why Helium has grown into the sort of largest public LoRaWAN network, and actually someone recently said the largest contiguous wireless network in the world, given that we're running LoRaWAN over a bunch of different countries at this point, it's because of the sort of incentive built into the network, which is the Helium blockchain and the token HNT. And so with that, we have been able to deploy coverage in well over 3,000 cities, I think 56, 57 countries at this point, with many more sort of on the list in the queue. That country number might be a touch high, but it's pretty close. And so I always like to pause and take a look at what's called the Helium Explorer to really show what's going on with the network. And then arguably the most interesting thing here is the map, right? So you can click on this map here and get a full sort of global up-to-date coverage map. So these things on the left here are your hotspots. We give them these great names like striped concrete jellyfish. And you can zoom into towns and cities to see what's happening with coverage. We actually pulled up one of the early hotspots, which happens to be in Krakow, Poland, called the Eager Citron Pike. And so you can, again, it's a public ledger. You can go through and look at all this data. And what's cool, and Michal tells me this is running near the office, not at the office, is that you can see things like packets transferred, right? So this thing is actually sending sensor data through the network, and I suspect it is from one of these sensors in their lab. So explore.helium.com, make sure you're spending a lot of time here. We'll talk about some other resources sort of at the end if people want to learn more about helium. But with that, I am going to kick it over to Michal and Chris and the Airly team, and we'll jump into that stuff. Does that sound good, guys?
Yes, sounds good.
Perfect.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
So before I jump to presentation, that is true that sensor is sending data through Helium platform. And here I have a sensor for comparison. It's not that big. It's comparable to my hand. So
it's quite tiny. It's like, can you hold it up again?
Yeah, it's about the size of an iPhone. It's kind of how we compare it to it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. That's great. All right.
Okay, so I will share my screen in a second. Can you see it?
Yes,
I've got it.
Perfect. So I would like to tell you more about Airly and what are we doing. Our primary goal is to build the single source of air quality data globally. And our goal is to repair the air. Some might argue that doing only the measurements is not enough to tackle air pollution, but I'll try to prove you that it's one of the steps that we have to take in order to be aware of the air quality and take actions. So why our company focuses on air quality? Air pollution is one of the biggest killers on the planet. It is estimated that it reduces global expectancy by almost 3 years. 9 out of 10 people are breathing high levels of air pollutants, and it's causing more deaths than tobacco, smoking, and violence. Recently, there were made a lot of connections with COVID-19 mortality, and air pollution is one of the factors that increase mortality by a factor of 3 times. So it's pretty high, and it is very important nowadays to know what the air quality we are breathing. And air pollution is also one of the biggest problems because you cannot see air pollution until the levels are so high that you are not able to breathe anymore. It was summer 2020, and in San Francisco there were a lot of fires, and the air quality was 3 times worse than in New Delhi. So air pollution can be caused by many factors like fires. In Poland, it is coal burning. Traffic can produce a lot of air pollution, and it differs. We can deal with air pollution that consists of particulate matter with nitrous dioxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide. So air pollution is a very complex problem, and somehow we have to deal with it. That's why Airly was founded. And in 2015, with my other co-founders, we started this company. And At first, we started from the inexpensive sensor. It is a core feature of our ecosystem. That there was one sensor that you saw, that you see here, is measuring air quality data real time, and it's sending those data to our air cloud. The way that we send those data can be done in many ways. At the beginning, we used Wi-Fi, then we switched to GSM, and now we are using any other technologies that have great coverage, such as Helium. Probably will be using also NB-IoT, LTE-M, but these are much costlier than Helium. Comparable, for example, we are paying 10 times less with Helium Helium network than with regular telecalls. So having great coverage in different places is very important to us, because we can deploy a lot of sensors and give air quality data to a lot of people.
And part of that there is as well, as we look at it, you know, we expand into countries that don't have Wi-Fi broadly available. We introduce GSM to be able to transmit the data in the right way. But we're still looking at communication problems. And so we're always looking to solve it. And that's partly why we're partnering with Helium here, is because we see that as a future that we can deploy easily, and in areas where it's both technology and cost prohibitive, it's a way to deliver the right information in those markets that are so desperately needing it.
Yeah, it's wild that Helium was founded 7 years ago. You know, we were not the first to raise money to sort of do IoT connectivity, and it's still not solved. Like everywhere in the world, this is still a problem, which is wild. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, when we started the company, it was the problem that we didn't know which protocol will win, and we are still struggling with this issue. Hopefully, the Helium will have global coverage, and it won't be a problem anymore.
Right.
So what our sensors are measuring? I said that particulate matter is one of the important pollutants. That's why you are measuring. It's particle PM1, PM2.5, and PM10. Also, we are measuring toxic gases, which are emitted by vehicles. They could be nitrogen dioxide, nitric oxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and the list could go on, because there is a lot of pollutants out there. But we're trying to focus on the ones that cause the more harm to human health.
So Michał, question for you there. So for someone like me who's not extremely you know, knowledgeable on air quality, so you said PM1, PM2.5, and PM10. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said. It's particulate matter, like tiny particles that are suspended in the air, and they are so light that they are not falling down on the earth. They are moving in. They are moving in the air, and their diameter is related to the number that you see after PM. So PM1, it means that the particles that have size lower than 1 micrometer. 1 micrometer is one hair has a diameter of 50 micrometers. So we could fit 50 particles that have diameter 1 micrometer. And these are the most harmful, because they can penetrate through your blood-brain barrier and get into your veins. So the smaller the particles, the worse for your health. Then we have particulate matter 2.5, which means that particles have size smaller than 2.5 micrometers, and the same applies for PM10.
And so with those, so for the sensing technology to sort of to detect that, you know, level of particulate, that's not something you guys created, right? That's a you use a part off the shelf and sort of incorporated that into your sensor, or did you build that capability from the ground up?
Actually, the story is more complicated than that. We are using off-the-shelf components, but you cannot do it without any knowledge. We had to understand what's being measured. There's a lot of issues with environment conditions. You have to take care about humidity, because humidity can increase the size of particulate matter that's suspended in the air, and you're measuring the particles that are you measure them as bigger if they are in the reality. So we have to adjust the measurements with compensation algorithms, and it's the technology that we are adding on top of the measurements that we are doing. So in our early cloud, we are doing a lot of calibrations, a lot of checking of data if there are any errors, if we can see that something is going wrong. And then if all this data is processed, then we can show it to broader audience. And by broader audience, I mean people, citizens that live in the city where the sensors are mounted. We are distributing this data via our mobile apps, which are very important aspect of our ecosystem. We are using also web platform, an API, and also customer panels where customers can generate reports and show the analysis to government and citizens.
Fascinating. So actually, on that topic, I want to ask a couple questions about the business side. But before that, I want Michał, like 1 or 2 more questions on the technology side. So, thinking specifically about the wireless link, and let's talk about the LoRaWAN and sort of Helium usage here. When you capture all that data, PM1, PM2.5, PM10, like how much actual data are we talking about sending over the network? How often are you capturing it? Are you doing any analysis on the sensor before it gets sent? Walk us through that slightly, or a bit rather.
Okay. So like every sensor, it depends on the version. If you have low power, it will be less frequent, but normally the devices are measuring air quality every second. And then we are performing some algorithms like an average, median, to ensure that there are no outlying data. And we can actually change the frequency of measurements being sent, but normally we send the data every 5 minutes. It's an average from 5 minutes, and somehow it's enough for detecting any anomalies. If the air quality became suddenly very poor, people can get notified very quick about that.
So you referenced the California fires, in your introduction. Thinking about you saying, I think your initial impression is, well, why would you have to measure air quality every minute? Are things really going to change every minute or every 5 minutes? But I mean, I'm just thinking back through the Helium like company Discord when those fires were happening. People were pulling up the sort of the air quality index, like various sites throughout California, and just reloading them constantly to see, where the air quality was going minute by minute. It was spiking from 100 to 250 down to 70. It was pretty wild. So the idea that air quality would change that quickly is not that crazy. Like you need that measurement pretty frequently.
Yeah, and also it changes with place where you are. Particulate matter has a lot of local sources of sources, and the air quality can be different in different regions of the city, which means that one station that is showing you good air quality cannot tell you your actual air quality when you are located 5 kilometers from it or more. So it is important to have time resolution, but also spatial resolution, which couldn't be achieved previously with air quality stations that were very expensive. It's one of the reasons that we want the devices to be inexpensive, is because we can deploy a lot of them. And this network will also double check itself if there are any failures. which can happen also with official stations where some errors can be observed.
Interesting. Huh. Okay. All right. Chris, if you got a second, let's take a couple questions here on the business side and the product
absolutely.
side. So you answered this in the chat, but I'll sort of call it out so people can hear your response. So Jeff asked, are you intending to market Airly to, is it purely a consumer device, or will it be sort of government agencies? Walk us through the strategy there.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and Michal didn't talk about the way that Airly was founded, but really these guys came together. They were training for a marathon in Poland, and were trying to find the right time of day to train because the air quality was so bad. That's, I mean, really the short story of how Airly was founded. Beyond that, it kind of became a consumer device in the sense that people were complaining about their air quality. They started getting these air quality sensors in the hands of people, and from that, governments took notice. So it really started as a consumer-driven device, then to try to influence government to make changes. Since then, we've kind of expanded our offering, but primarily we have a consumer device, and afterward, our kind of closing slide, we'll show you what that looks like, show you where you can buy it. There's a discount code we'll give the attendees for this. We're building out the helium sensors now, so it's a pre-order that we're launching in early spring here as part of this. But the idea is we want to be the most trusted source of air quality data on the planet. And I think Michal will show you kind of what our maps look like and how we're capturing that information and what all that looks like.
Okay.
But within that, we know that that's not just a government-driven decision, that as governments work, some things work efficiently and some things don't. So we want to put our devices in the hands of as many consumers as we can.
Do you get pushbacks? Sorry, do you get any pushback from governments for this data being public?
Like when at first we started in Poland, the city where we are living in and where company is based didn't want to hear about air quality, and they didn't want to inform people because it could somehow bring attention on the city government. And at first, people at governments were skeptical, but we started to do POCs to launch networks in different cities, and they couldn't stop it because the data were already public, and people saw it on the map, and then there was a shift in their behavior. They were started to want this solution, and when we first started to deliver it for the consumer market, we understood that people are benefiting it, but local governments could support it as well, like funding those networks and bring the air quality measurements to their citizens.
It's also been interesting in the US. So we've seen the pushback from the citizens having the data, and the governments don't necessarily want that published because they've got they're trying to protect whatever they're trying to protect. But likewise, in the US, we've been talking to cities that have federal funding. And so the federal government is dispersing that funding based on federal sensors, and the cities are wanting to put our sensors in because they don't believe the federal data is correct, and they can, so it kind of goes both ways in where that pushback comes from.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, I keep derailing you. If you want to move through your slides,
okay.
Go ahead.
No, good conversation.
Questions. Yeah.
Maybe I can talk more about the layers that we are adding into our air quality calibration and
Please.
data management. Over last 2 years, we were developing an advanced machine learning model that uses air quality data to predict what will be air pollution 24 hours ahead. We probably are the first that combined air quality with machine learning algorithms. We are using that because a lot of air pollution is being generated by humans, and the patterns that are observed cannot be predicted by physical models like dispersion models that take into account stable emissions This just doesn't work. Someone can burn in their stove every 6 hours, and it cannot be somehow put into a physical model. That's why we invented this machine learning model. We're using a lot of inputs, starting from weather data and ending on day of the week. For example, the air pollution tends to be lower on weekends because there is less traffic. And this machine learning model works for PM 2.5 and PM 10, and we are working on launching it with gas pollutants as well.
So, for example, you could tell a city that they should run a marathon tomorrow or not run a marathon tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, so it's a city and it's localized too. So our goal is to have, depending on where you live, your air quality could be different a mile away. It could be different 10 miles away, right? Depending on if you're in the city center or whatever that looks like. So we want to get as local into air quality data as we can. So as you're making plans across your day, how you're getting from home to work, those types of things, that can have a drastic difference. In Meshek's terms, it's a 26-mile difference on that on the marathon, right? So you want to understand the points along the way.
How many of these sensors in any given area do you need to derive useful data? I mean, Howard, for example, was asking a similar question. Indoors, would you deploy these? How do you go about doing like, a 50-story high building? But at a general level, like how many of these sensors are needed to derive useful data in a given area?
Yeah, so we are estimating that the highest density that would be the best is 2 or 3 sensors per 1 kilometer squared, but it's very dense network. It also depends on the type of environment that you are measuring in. For example, if you're measuring in urban environments, you can have a lot of air pollution sources, which could dramatically impact the readings. The devices that are a couple hundreds meters away from each other could show you different values. But in places where there is not many houses, there could be less density to get good quality data.
Interesting. Okay. So a bit of a time check, by the way. We've got about 15 minutes left. So we can jump to more slides if you'd like.
Okay. So here is how our web platform and mobile apps look like. As I said before, we want to show this to a lot of people. So this platform is actually open to anyone who wants to get live and accurate air quality data. We are also integrating the other data sources like official monitoring stations and other network sensors providers. But we want to at first do it with our own devices, because you can see a lot of white spots on the maps, and we think that there's a need for the devices there, and we want to do with our sensors that are probably that will be based on Helium network, and will have coverage in a lot of places.
But you guys have some sort of open API where other data producers can send data to the Airly platform?
At the moment, no. We are integrating it on our own. If the other producers have their API publicly available, but at some point maybe, but it's a couple of years ahead from now.
Got it. Okay, interesting. And then just on that topic before we move on, aside from the fact that, obviously improving people's quality of life is better through data, is there any additional incentive for someone to want to send data to the Airly platform?
Probably we'll introduce such thing that people will be able to send data to our platform. For example, to compare indoor and outdoor air quality. They could have their own sensor that it's running in their houses, and then compare it with Early network. So you know if your air purifiers are working efficiently or no. So there's many use cases.
Yeah, today we're trying to aggregate as much air quality data as we can globally. So I saw a question in the chat: is that live accurate data? The answer is depends on the sensor. So our sensors are transmitting every 5 minutes. We've integrated with government sensors that only transmit data hourly, sometimes less than that. So when you click on, I call them the dots, any of the markers on the map, you'll see kind of who has that sensor, whether that's a government sensor. If you're in the UK, whether that's a DEFRA sensor or whatever that might look like, if that's an Airly sensor or if it's a different private sensor. But our sensors have the highest level of accuracy only because we're transmitting at 5 minute intervals in that. But our goal is, we're looking at right now, how do we layer in things like, as Mihail was saying, indoor air quality. So if you've got poor outdoor air quality, you know that's bad. What does that mean for a livable state for you? So we've done some tests with companies like Philips, who produce indoor air quality sensors, but that's on our roadmap to figure out. You want to know kind of where you live, work, and play. If it's bad outside, what does it look like inside?
Yep.
And try to look at it that way.
And also what's worth mentioning is that we are building a mobile platform which will be able to measure air pollution on top of moving vehicles. So for example, the buses could measure air quality where local and stationary sensors cannot reach, and it will add another level of accuracy into our data.
Awesome.
And you can see on the right on our apps example how air quality can differ. For example, you can see Poland and the air quality in Silesia region where the coal is being produced, where it's being mined. It's very polluted at the time when the screenshot was taken, but the other parts of Poland are quite good or moderate. So it's important to measure it locally, and even if we would zoom in, we could see the differences in sensors. So maybe I could show you how the map works, but before then, if you are interested in helium-based sensors, you can go on our website with this link below and use Helium 20 discount code, which will give you 20% discount for helium compatible sensors.
Sorry, can you just drop that link into the chat, Chris? I can't copy it, but can you?
Oh yeah, sorry, I will do that right now.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So if you want more information, you can contact Chris or me with those email addresses. And as Chris said, we'll be launching helium compatible sensors early spring. So we'll stay tuned and we'll post you information if they're ready to ship.
Howard's asking if the first 10 orders get a free helium hotspot. We can figure something out, Howard. Let's get the 10 and we'll see what happens. Sorry about the noise in the background.
I saw a couple questions come in kind of on our business model and things like that. I just also want to state, just as if you're looking at this, we're building out the helium side. So this is a pre-order. So we're limiting the pre-order to 100 helium units with that 20% discount code, and those are going to be shipped early spring. Now, there's if you go on the site, what you'll see is an enterprise piece as well. I didn't take screenshots of that. When we're working with municipalities or we're working with kind of an enterprise customer, there's a monthly business model based on what they're trying to accomplish and data that they need and things like that. But for our direct to consumer and especially our helium customers, it's a one-time cost on this. So we look at the consumer level, it's an IoT device that we're trying to get on the network and get you your local air quality data. There's also ways to export that data. We can talk through. I can send anybody information that they want if you have more questions.
Yeah, I guess on that topic, while we're talking about the business model side, so this is more of a message to anybody who's listening that might be a patron, right? People who are deploying a lot of helium coverage, or maybe you've got 5, 10 hotspots and you're thinking about sort of growing. This is the exact sort of thing you should be taking to like your town council, right? You know, if there's no air quality data coming out of your city or town, you know, and you're looking for a good way to demonstrate the value of the network that you've been working super hard to deploy with your local, you know, hosts operating hotspots and whatnot. This is perfect, right? This is like you set it up, it gets deployed super fast. It gives value to the person who's deploying it, which is super cool. And also it ties in very nicely with what the Helium sort of people's network ethos is all about, right? Building something that the whole world can sort of get value from in a way that hasn't been done before. So I'm like endlessly excited about this. It's super cool stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a relationship there. I'm working with a council outside of London who has a trash incinerator that's a government incinerator, and they're trying to measure the pollutant levels that aren't being measured. So they're buying sensors they're essentially being their own patrons and trying to set them up around this incinerator to prove what's happening in their community and the poor air quality. But often I find that people don't care about their air quality until it's bad, and when they do, they don't know what to do about it because they can't understand what it looks like. And so that's why, Mark, as you were talking about when fires were going on in the Discord server, you were seeing all of these kind of conversations go on about air quality. But then where do you go? What do you do with that? And that's really what we're trying to solve is show what that localized air quality is. When fires were going on, Mishek may have a screenshot of it or not, but we were able to kind of pinpoint centers of fires and things like that just from the air quality data that we were receiving. And so it's really interesting in all of the use cases that we have around it.
I will stop sharing my screen at the moment. I will show you how the fire detection could look like. And also, it is very important about supporting communities and giving them ways how to tackle air pollution, because it differs in different places. There are different sources. For example, in the city of one of my co-founders, there were one factory that emitted a lot of air pollution, and people knew this, but they couldn't prove it. And they installed our sensors, and because of that, they were able to localize this pollutant, this factory that they are polluting a lot of air pollution. And 25% of 25% of people living in that city went on the streets and protested against this factory. And after a couple months, they succeeded, and the factory had to install the filters on their chimneys. So it could be tackled.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we end here with a couple of screenshots or some sort of demo? I think you had, Michal. Is that possible?
Yeah, totally. I'll just share you the example how the air quality can differ. A couple years ago, we had a couple of fires in Poland of dumps, and here you can see a fire, and the air pollution is being emitted in one direction, and not all the sensors showed bad air quality due to the wind. It was narrow part of the city which was polluted, but you couldn't localize where the air quality was bad without that many sensors. So it is important to have high density of sensors. And I'll switch now to demo.
And just a quick note for this, looks like there's a handful of questions there about the business model. So I'm going to recommend that you email Chris. I think Chris, maybe just pop your email again in the chat here. Chris is going to be the best information source here for everything about Airly business model related.
And if you have any questions, I saw a couple things on UK and Canada. I'll try to respond here. Just pop me an email and I will. I'll get back to you quickly. We can get you sensors. That's the short answer.
And I'm here showing you the example how the air quality may differ in different parts of the city. So we are looking at west part of the US, and here are sensors that are green and show almost 0 micrograms per meter cube. And here you can see the one sensor that has very high levels of air pollution. And it is important to measure with high density in the cities, because there's a lot of localized air pollution sources.
Super cool. And that's an app that is public, right? This
You can go to early.org/map, and you can browse this data, see it on yourself.
Nice.
What we have here we have a lot of technologies. You won't find any map that is working so smoothly as ours. That is a very great feature that our developers recently introduced. When you are going to other maps, you will see the lag, huge lag, but our map is working flawlessly. What else I can show you? When you are going into sensors data, you can see what parameters does it measure. We are displaying a common air quality index because each type of air pollution can have different impact on your health. Therefore, you have to introduce some index that will manage all the pollutants, and that's what's common air quality index. It takes the pollutant that has the highest impact, and it affects the index the most.
Cool.
Well, you can see the graph from 24 hours. You can also generate widgets to add to your website. What else? We have Earlypedia, where you can learn more about air pollution. We are also working on some community features. In places where there is no air quality, you could somehow take a picture of people or factories that are emitting high levels of air pollution and share it with your local community. So we are trying to make people more engaged and fight for the air quality.
Oh, nice. While he's showing that, let me address a couple of questions that I see in the chat. One, you see the gray dots on here. Some of, like I said, we integrate with a lot of sensors, a lot of government sensors. A big problem that we find is they're not always online. So while most sensors, government side, are supposed to be transmitting hourly, that doesn't always happen. And you can kind of see the lack of density here. Our app, you can download our app on Google Play or iTunes. It's free. This is all open. We're just publishing the data that we have on here. We are talking to some media companies and things like that about how we share our data with them in terms of they want to publish air quality in on the news or things like that. But beyond that, that's really kind of what we're looking at from the standpoint of what else are we doing with the data outside of this currently. There's no paywalls to this or anything like that. It's you come in and you can see your data, your neighbor's data, things, all of that, and as well as your whatever government sensors are in there. I know there's a lot of questions going on. I just would encourage everyone to email me if I don't get to them.
Yeah, and we gotta cut it off here, guys, because we're running over time. But I do want to say thank you to Chris and Michal. You've got their information. You guys should certainly email them. They're a fantastic resource for all things air quality and Helium. Quite frankly, they're going to be huge network users. And yeah, thanks to everybody for joining. You know where to find Helium. It's just helium.com or discord.gg/Helium for the Discord server. And yeah, let's go get some air quality for the world, and let's go put some of these sensors up. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Okay, bye.
Bye.